Longtime senior pastor, best-selling author, former Florida law enforcement officer, 10-year conservative talk radio host, also founder of ppsimmons, the world-famous YouTube ministry and biblical apologetics channel. Carl, as always, how you doing, sir?
Hey, you're doing great, Bill. My goodness, it's always an honor and a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me on today.
No, great to have you on. I want to have you put on your law enforcement hat on for a moment, if you can. Much has been said about Michael Brown and Ferguson, Missouri, and we hear little about the officer involved here. And I want you to speak to that. It was reported last week that he was married here in the last 2 weeks. I believed that there would be, a process, that there was no way that Officer Wilson could go back on the force. They'd have to find some place for him. But suddenly he resigns.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
Well, listen. Yes, 10 years I spent in Florida law enforcement. I've been in the ministry now as the senior pastor of a church for almost 30 years. So I've got a lot of life experience and experience in dealing with people and hurts and deaths and tragedies, as well as dealing in law enforcement as a patrol officer with a badge and a gun in a patrol car, dealing with almost identical situations that Darren Wilson dealt with. So what do I make of all of this? Well, in the final analysis, if the information that the grand jury returned, the no bill, if their investigation is correct, and I would have to assume that it is based upon what I know about how grand juries work and the lengthy explanation given, then in this situation, since it gained, we live in a different age. 30 years ago, when I was in law enforcement, we didn't have internet, and you couldn't just take an incident that happened in Ferguson, Missouri, and make it a worldwide, centerpiece of discussion, and make it the center of 24/7 news. We didn't have that then. So with that being said, in the final analysis of it all, Darren Wilson probably had no choice but to resign. I mean, if he goes back on the force, he is in constant danger. Right. And perhaps something, shots being taken at him, attempted, he's already had death threats, plus the officers with whom he's associated would be in constant danger, because we live in this mass communication, mass information age. I think he probably had no choice, and I think it was a wise, very judicious thing to do based upon what I know.
I hope he's taken care of, though.
Well,
I hope somehow. Do too. The way it went off, it was kind of silent. Something, he said he wasn't coerced to do. It was a decision he and his wife came to in and of themselves. And God bless him for doing that. But I hope that the Officers Association there in Ferguson are taking care of him.
Well, I do too, Bill, and I think that story has yet to be told, and I think that they're just kind of being quiet with it because feelings are still on rough edges all over the nation. And by the way, Bill, listen, I don't want to get into deep conspiracy theories. I don't have any hardcore evidence to put my finger on, but I was an investigator for years. I think in an investigative mode. That's how my mind works. I know about the Occupy movements. I know that Holder and Obama inserted themselves into Ferguson, Missouri. I know that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton inserted themselves in Ferguson, Missouri. I know that there were calls for protests and even riots. Obama himself, after the grand jury indictment of no bill was announced, Obama himself in a speech, and we've got this on ppsimmons. And now there's a context to this statement, but still, take this statement that he said. In this speech, here's the President of the United States, who should speak peace and calm into this, who should speak a voice of reason into this. He literally said, Bill, he said, well, in a situation like this, violence is inevitable, and it will make for good television. He said that. The President of the United States said that. Now, violence is inevitable? No, didn't have to be. That's not true. It was almost as though there was this continual call for violence to erupt. And it didn't just erupt in Ferguson. It erupted all over the nation.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is, the other statement that I found very puzzling when he said, stay the course. What did that mean?
Yeah. Well, that's right. Exactly. What did that mean? I mean, it's a double entendre. I mean, if you're constantly have a message of peace and then you say, stay the course, then okay, cool. I mean, we got it. Stay the course. Be peaceful. Let cooler heads prevail. But when there's this mixed message of violence is inevitable, it'll make for good television. I mean, that's code word for run out and get your face on TV.
Exactly. Right.
And then says, stay the course, after he's already inserted himself, and after Jesse Jackson and what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Go down and without any restraint. And listen, Bill, please don't forget this. And I want your audience to remember this. October of 2013, a young black woman by the name of Miriam Carey, a dental hygienist with a 2-year-old child in her car, was gunned down in front of the Capitol. White officers were involved, and those officers were given a congressional medal. And where was Jesse Jackson? Where was Al Sharpton? Where was Eric Holder? Where was Barack Obama? Where were grand jury investigations? I mean, what's up with this, Bill?
Yeah, it's it causes you to wonder, but yet the thing is, Carl, it's interesting because you and I have talked about this, and that the people are starting to get it. I mean, Sharpton was booed off. Jesse Jackson wasn't warmly received in Ferguson everywhere. Even with these different hotspots. I'm in Southern California this week, and there was 15 people that started a rally in downtown Los Angeles, which is nothing. I mean, that's a coffee clutching kind of thing. Well, it never picked up speed, and they just kind of evaporated off. Yes. I guess people are really seeing this for what it is.
Well, I think they are. And here's the deal. Listen. Again, many years in law enforcement, a grand jury is a brilliant idea of our founders. It is a calm in the midst of a storm. Often, it's very, very difficult to manipulate a grand jury. Now, that's not to say it can't be done, but it's difficult. My wife has served as chairman of a grand jury before in years past. I know how these work. Now, they vary from state to state, but the bottom line is a grand jury is extremely powerful. Its sole purpose is to get to the truth of the matter as much as the truth of a matter can be gotten to. They have very few legal restraints. They can call any witnesses they want. They can ask any questions. They're not bound by a lawyer jumping up and saying, I object to that line of questions. They can ask them anything. Right. And they can get any witnesses. They can call law enforcement in. They can interview anybody they want, because their purpose is not to render a guilty or not guilty judgment. Their purpose is to get all the information that can be gotten, weigh it out amongst a group of what's the word I'm looking for? Various people. A conglomeration of people, races, genders, socioeconomic status, thinkers, and to get these people to say, look, is there a case here or not? And after 3 months of meeting and talking and interviewing and investigating and calling any and everybody they wanted to call, asking any and every question they wanted to ask, interviewing all the witnesses who they could get to come forward, the grand jury said, you know what? Wilson, as tragic as this is, as tragic, it's every officer's nightmare, Bill. I've been in these situations. But the grand jury said, this officer did not do anything wrong. And I think you're right. I think the people of America, after hearing all of that and realizing what the grand jury does and how powerful that is, I mean, in this case, the grand jury is more powerful than the president, more powerful than Eric Holder, more powerful than Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton. They're hugely powerful. They gathered everything that could be gathered, and they said, no, Bill, we're not going to indict this guy. We're not going to arrest and bring this guy to trial. He did not do anything wrong. Now, was it horrible? Was it tragic? Did somebody lose their life? Could if we could do it all over, might there be another way? If Wilson had known what was going on with Michael Brown, he might have handled it differently? Yes, but it was every officer's nightmare. He stopped Wilson for jaywalking, basically, and for suspicious activity. And apparently, according to the information, Wilson turned on him, reached in the car, wrestled with him, tried to get the officer's gun.
Yeah, fired off a couple of rounds in the car.
If that's a fact, when I was a cop, I would have probably had to have done the same thing, tragically. It's a nightmare.